When Douglas Murray appeared on the Bill Maher show, Politically Incorrect, to discuss his latest book, The War on the West, it wasn't just another intellectual chat. It was a battle cry, a piercing alarm for anyone still living under the delusion that what happens in Israel stays in Israel. Let's get one thing straight. Israel is not just defending itself in this war that we're fighting here. We're defending all of civilization. We're defending you. Hamas is not a fringe terrorist Islamic group. It's the foot soldier of a global death cult rooted in a 1,400-plus-year-old ideology that glorifies murder, rape, and conquest in the name of Allah. This ideology has metasized in the West under the guise of progressive activism, really regressive. Douglas Murray called it out for what it is, a death cult embraced by a suicidal, progressive, really regressive left, and a blind, often complicit right. On the Bill Maher show and later with Dave Smith on Joe Rogan's podcast, Douglas Murray pulled no punches. He exposed the shocking embrace of jihadist values on college campuses, in the mainstream media, and even among supposed civil rights groups. He exposed the moral collapse of Western society that now views Hamas butchers as resistance fighters and Jews as colonializers in their own homeland. This is not just Jew-hating anti-Semitism. This is civilizational treason. A new research study by the Capital Research Center proves it. Their analysis of over 100,000 social media posts by nearly 500 leading pro-Palestinian groups in America shows what we all feel in our bones. This is not about Gaza. These groups have morphed into an anti-American police pro-terrorist movement that calls for violence on the soil of the United States of America. Since the October 7th massacre, there's been a 3,000% increase in violent rhetoric and a 186% spike in anti-American slogans. These are not peace activists. These are seditionists. They're not protesting injustice. They're championing Hamas-style tactics right here in the heart of the Western world, meaning America. When you chant from the river to the sea, you're not just calling for the annihilation of Israel, you are calling for the end of Western civilization. And to globalize the Intifada, a violent terrorist movement to globalize, to have an America in the West, and yet the West keeps dancing around the fire. University presidents can't even condemn Hamas. Corporate CEOs bow to DEI bureaucrats who praise terrorists. Even elements of the libertarian right twist themselves into knots, trying to blame the Jews for their own slaughters, as Douglas Murray courageously is calling out, specifically on the Joe Rogan podcast. The truth is simple. If Israel fails, the West follows. The war against the Jewish state and the Jewish people is the frontline battle in a much larger war against Judeo-Christian civilization, freedom, reason, and life itself. This is not a clash of cultures. This is a clash between civilization and barbarism. Barbarism in the name of Islam. If you support Israel, you're not just supporting a country or the Jewish people, you're standing with the last line of defense against a bloodthirsty ideology that will not stop in Tel Aviv or Gaza. It will come for New York, London, Los Angeles, Paris, and the whole Western world. Israel, yes, the Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel, we are your shield. Do not stand idly by while the death cult chips away at it from within and without. This isn't just about the Jews. It never was. Now I want to do a deep dive into Douglas Murray's appearance on the Joe Rogan program, calling out the danger of some influential voices on the conservative libertarian right in America. In that program, Joe Rogan basically hosted a debate between Douglas Murray and Dave Smith, mostly about Israel, but not just. While Rogan meant to host a discussion, what unfolded was a moral tragedy because one of the participants, Dave Smith, is not only dangerously uninformed about Israel and the war we're fighting, but he says that he himself is Jewish. I have no clue that's true or not. So that's what makes this so painful, because he's talking as a Jew. Dave Smith stood on one of the biggest platforms in the world, the Joe Rogan podcast, and repeated the most toxic lies about Israel and the Jewish people, accusing us of genocide, while downplaying the true evil and genocide we are up against. A Sunni, Qatari, and Shia Iran-supported terror regime that massacred innocent Israelis, burned babies alive, raped our women, all in the name of resistance. It's one thing when clueless activists say these horrendous lies. But when someone who claims that they are a Jew, someone who should understand the historical weight of the word genocide, turns it against his own people during a war for our survival, that's not just ignorance. That's betrayal. And from an influencer with a large following. Douglas Murray is one of the best voices of truth and moral clarity in the world today regarding Israel and this war we are fighting. And he came prepared, as always, with facts, context, and moral clarity. He knows the region. He understands the stakes. He knows what is happening to his native Britain under the tsunami of Muslim immigration and migrants over the decades. And in a rational world, that should have been enough for him to be listened to. But here's the hard truth about the debate. Murray lost the emotional battle to sway many of Joe Rogan's listeners. And that was the battle that Dave Smith was fighting for. Douglas Murray chose to lean in hard on the trust the experts argument. At least the first hour of the podcast was focused on that, highlighting how Dave Smith and other influencers on the conservative libertarian right are failing to listen to experts and do due diligence and instead focus on pushing a false and damaging narrative about Israel and this war of survival we are fighting. That argument of not listening to experts might have worked a few years ago, but definitely not today with Joe Rogan's audience. People who've learned the hard way that so many experts have been lying to us about so many headline issues over the years that have dominated policy, whether COVID, gender, race, climate, and yes, Israel. The people listening to that debate, they don't want credentials. They want to hear common sense based on factual information. And the truth is, this issue is common sense. You do not need a PhD to understand what happened on October 7th that our Islamo-Nazi enemies live streamed for the world. That was celebrated on October 7th and October 8th, weeks before Israel's IDF operation. An Iranian and Qatari-supported Hamas invaded Israel. They tortured families. They paraded our dead and hostages through the streets of Gaza to celebrations by the innocent Gaza civilians. They kidnapped babies and Holocaust survivors, and they're still holding 59 innocent people underground in the terror tunnels of Gaza. And this is all based on a tradition where they scream today on the streets of New York, LA, or London, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yehud, wanting to relive the successful Muslim massacre of Jews in the village of Khaybar, Saudi Arabia, back in the 7th century. This is not anything new. This is a death cult we are up against in the name of Islam for thousands plus years. If I was Douglas Murray, I would have focused on asking Dave Smith basically two questions. What would you be doing, Dave, to get the hostages back? And what would you be doing to make sure on October 7th never happens again that would endanger Israeli lives? That's it. Using the facts and then those questions, putting Dave in a corner to have to answer. Because let's be honest, Israel has done everything possible to avoid non-combatant casualties. Hamas, on the other hand, our Islamo-Nazi enemies, they do everything to maximize their own civilian casualties. They fire rockets from their hospitals. They hide weapons in schools. They use their own mothers, grandmothers, and children as human shields. They built a terror tunnel empire under their homes, hospitals, and schools where their terrorists hide, but non-combatants are forbidden to enter for shelter, and they never built any shelters above ground for their non-combatants. And what about UNRWA? The so-called humanitarian agency of the United Nations that employs Hamas terrorists as teachers and aid workers. Some of them even participated in the October 7th massacre. Yeah, United Nations paid workers. And yet the Western world that cares about human rights and preventing genocides keeps funding them till today. What Israel is doing in Gaza in this war isn't genocide. This is restraint in the face of a barbarism that we must end in order to ensure that no Israeli is ever again massacred or raped from any Arab Muslim ever again, especially from Gaza. And we don't want from anywhere else either. And they got to pay the price and be stopped. And the claim of blaming Netanyahu for supporting Hamas because he allowed Qatari funds into Gaza is either ignorance or political malice. It was the least bad option under relentless United States government-led international pressure that it would have otherwise blamed Israel for starving civilians and pushed for the Palestinian Authority to take over Gaza as a step towards forcing upon us a dangerous Palestinian state. And the claim, whether from Dave Smith or from Israel's leftist opposition, is not just a lie that Bibi propped up Hamas. It's insane. And parroting it only helps our enemies, delegitimizes Israel, and undermines our right to defend ourselves. And the whole Israeli left supported it as well. And yet they're blaming Netanyahu. So even though Douglas has all the truth and provided it mostly at the end of the program, he didn't channel the correct moral fire that the debate demanded in order to discredit Dave Smith. And instead, again, Douglas leaned in on the expert argument that automatically turned many Rogan listeners against him already at the beginning of the program, so they weren't necessarily listening to him when he was talking the truths. We are in a battle, not just against Hamas, but against the lies poisoning minds around the world, on right and left and at center. This is a war of civilization versus savagery, and our enemies know how to wage psychological warfare just as much as the military warfare they're waging against us. Now here's the part that needs to be said loud and clear. Dave Smith's ignorance, it isn't just about him. It's a symptom of a much deeper problem, because while anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hatred has long been entrenched on the progressive left, where it's institutionalized and openly celebrated within the Democratic Party, we're now watching it grow on the populist, yes, Trump-supporting conservative right. And that should terrify anyone who loves America. Some on the conservative right are falling for the same oppressor versus oppressed Marxist narrative pushed by the far left. They're swallowing the propaganda of the Green-Red Alliance, the Marxist-Islamist coalition, without realizing that Israel is just their first target. We're the canary in the coal mine. The ultimate goal of the Marxist-Islamist coalition is to destroy Israel. And as Israel and the Jews being the canary in the coal mine, instead of turning on the Jewish state, all American conservatives and libertarians should be standing with us. Not just because it's morally right, but because our fight is their fight too. Douglas Murray gets it. He's not Jewish, but he understands the stakes for the whole world. He knows that when one abandons Israel and the Jews, you weaken the whole freedom-loving world. He came into that debate armed with the truth, but truth alone isn't enough. It must be delivered properly to the correct audience. So to the Dave Smiths out there on the conservative libertarian right of America, if you say you care about freedom, about truth, about Western civilization, then it's time to wake up. Just because experts can't be blindly trusted, well, neither can every conspiracy theory against Israel or the Jews. And there are a lot of them. Yes, we have our own deep state problems that you have. And people who are born Jews, some of them do evil things together with people who are born Christians, born Muslims, and atheists, etc. But those of them that are Jews don't represent the proud Jewish people sovereign in our ancestral homeland Israel. And the Jewish state of Israel is not running the world or the seat of all evil in the United States. So stop peddling those Jew-hating blood libels. That is not just harming Israel and the Jews, but ultimately is harming the United States of America and the whole freedom-loving world as well. Stand with your people, stand with Israel, stand with the Jewish people, stand with what's right, stand with common sense and not the lies. Because if you don't, if you keep parroting the enemy's talking points, you're not just betraying Israel. You're helping bring down America and betraying the American people as well. We here in Israel are the people from the biblical times to today, representing the side of life and morality in the world. And we will never stop defending our homeland, with or without anyone's help. And all of humanity owes Douglas Murray a huge thank you for using his voice on the world stage in sharing the truth and moral clarity. Our future is bright, and for those who stick with us. The Bible is clear. God says those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. Now the question is, where does everyone stand? Are they going to go with the blessing, or are they going to go and choose the curse? And that's what you get from me. The inspiring, belief-based, politically incorrect truth. And for years we've been fighting the left, and now we have to raise our voice against the lies that are coming out little by little, more and more, also from the right. At the end of the day, all of us common sense people who care about freedom, we must stick together. Left, right, doesn't make a difference. We have to use our common sense and stand up for the biblical values that God gave us and the Jewish people exemplify, and we are supposed to exemplify as a nation, as sovereign, back in our ancestral homeland. And that is the process we are going through right now, to claim that role that we have been unable to claim for all these centuries that have been scattered in exile. Now we're finally back. We built the country. The physical state of the country exists. Now we're after making sure the spiritual state of the country goes according to the value system that God chose for us in order to be a light unto the nations and be able to make the world a better place. It's not us having to fix the world. It's by us exemplifying how we live in our own country that the rest of the world say, that's how we want to live. And that's how we make a difference in the world. Signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel. If you are not yet a subscriber, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe. And yes, we are a donor-based organization. We need your support as we are heavily censored across all social media platforms. It's thanks to your donations, large and small, we're able to do our work, and we want our videos to be seen so we can inspire more people. So every once in a while, just go to pulseofisrael.com and click on the donate button. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.